Is Zach Edey the most significant member of the Memphis Grizzlies in this moment? It sounds crazy to say out loud, but it might just be true if you listen to the words of one Tuomas Isolo. I'm going to put Damichael Cole to the test, trying to read between the lines or maybe read a little too far into an Isolo quote. Plus, John Morant being called the worst waste of talent, essentially, in NBA history. I don't want to put words in Nick Wright's mouth. That's tricky business. But all sorts of hot takes out there about Ja, plus Grizzlies Pelicans. It's a loaded edition on this Thanksgiving Eve Locked On Grizzlies show. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullianx, senior contributor over at Beale Street Bears, joined by the incomparable, the remarkable, somebody that I am grateful for each and every time that I am fortunate enough to share the podcast stage with him, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, Mr. Damichael Cole. Damichael, how are you on this Thanksgiving Eve, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. You know, we're talking about Thanksgiving Eve. I tell you what, Joe, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for a lot. I'm thankful for a lot on this Thanksgiving Eve. But yeah, how you doing, Joe? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm thankful too, right? I was talking to some folks earlier on Wednesday. You know, we have so much to be grateful for. There's a lot more that brings us together than divides us. You hear that all the time, but it really is true. And I do love Thanksgiving because this time of year, right, there's like a Canadian Thanksgiving, allegedly a Canadian Thanksgiving. American Thanksgiving, this time of year, a very uniquely American holiday. There's family, there's friends, there's food, there's football, all sorts of great things to enjoy. Damichael Cole is going to take you guys on that journey on our Thanksgiving episode later on. But first, we have our Thanksgiving Eve edition of the show, and the dynamic duo rides once more. Certainly something to be grateful for. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Also, the #1 sports podcast network out there. We are so grateful to be a small part of the Locked On Podcast Network, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube, wherever you catch a podcast, become an everydayer. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, make Damichael and I a part of your everyday NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. It's been a great year for Locked On Grizzlies. It's been a great month, great last couple of months for Locked On Grizzlies. We are riding high. I wish the same could be said for the Memphis Grizzlies. Things are so bad in Memphis, Damichael, that they are practicing on the day between games. If you're not on YouTube, I have my hands on my
That's not usual, is it, Joe? That's not a usual. That's not a usual thing.
I'm so shocked that they're actually practicing. And Tuomas Isolo was shocked too. He said, "Whoa, let's not go crazy. This is not practice."
He said I wouldn't call it a practice.
Easy on the P word, right? But it was something else that Isolo said between the game against the Denver Nuggets and the practice that wasn't a practice on Tuesday. Excuse me. That caught me off guard. And it was this idea that the game plan against the Denver Nuggets was completely blown to smithereens. It was undone by the injury to Zach Edey, and we'll talk more about Edey's availability going into the Pelicans game tonight. Migraines, it sounds like this happened last year too, if I remember correctly, when it comes to Edey for a couple of games. Questionable for the game. We'll get to that later on in the show. But Edey had to come out of the game against the Nuggets, and it completely discombobulated whatever schemes were devised for this contest. And that took me aback, Damichael, because in case anybody missed it, I don't know how you would miss the 6'11", 245-pound near max contract player that was on the floor. Jaren Jackson Jr. was active for that particular contest. So you have a player in Zach Edey who 18 months ago, we were being told by several smart basketball people might be the worst pick in the history of the NBA draft. And that looks very silly, right? And I think that was chastised for good reason at the time. But it's almost like this pendulum has gone to the entire opposite side now. And Zach Edey is blowing up game plans when players like Jaren Jackson Jr. are on the court, active for the game.
So what are you trying to say, Joe? What are you trying to say?
I'm just asking questions. And as I have a tendency to do at Joe Mullianx on X, I got people a little bit fired up on a Tuesday. I apologize. Actually, I don't apologize. It's kind of my thing.
That's you, Joe. That's you.
I asked a simple question. Is Zach Edey the most significant member of the Memphis Grizzlies? Because you have a near max player who was active for the contest that apparently the game plan went to hell and he was still in the game. And then you have a Ja Morant, who we'll talk more about a little bit later on in the program here, that apparently is so dependent on Zach Edey that without him, he is a shell of the player that he once was, and he is the one max contract guy on the team. So I'll put it to you, Damichael Cole, somebody who knows this team better than anybody. Am I overreacting at this stage of the season on November 26th? Am I overreactive saying that Zach Edey is currently the most significant member of the Memphis Grizzlies?
I don't think you're overreacting. I do not think you're overreacting. I don't exactly agree because to me, I will say Cedric Coward. Giving
Whoa!
Yeah, look, we're not far apart. We're both leaning in a younger direction here.
Whoa!
We're both leaning in a younger direction. But
that's a fun take.
I'm gonna say Cedric Coward is based on what he's brought to the table and what we think he can be and what the Grizzlies will invest in him going forward. 100%, it is important to make sure this guy stays on a quote unquote straight and narrow. But with that being said, you know who I have number 2? It's not Ja. It's not Jaren. It's Zach Edey. It's Zach Edey. I'm here, Joe. I'm with you. I'm with you, Joe. I'm right with you. I'm not far from you.
You're taking what I thought was a pretty hot take, and you're turning up the burner.
Turn it up.
You have a hotter take than me.
Let's put the stove on high.
So Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. are not even in the top 2 on the team in terms of significance.
No. Now, let me add some additional context to that because
please
those 2 players are in the top 2 in terms of, if you look at it from the perspective of what they meant to the franchise over the last few years, right? What they've done, all of that good stuff, yada yada yada. But
they make over $70 million combined.
They make a bunch of money. But here's where I am, Joe. Here's where I am. I'm looking at it how you look at it, Joe. You always say, what's your phrase, Joe? Are we trying to win a championship or not? Isn't that what you say, Joe Mullianx? That's your word.
We didn't get the t-shirts made, but it is something I say.
Here's what I said on X on November 23rd. It was the night after the November 22nd game against Dallas. I said it was a post that was showing Zach Edey's stats from the game against Dallas. And I said, quote unquote, this dude is going to be a really good NBA player. He's been so impressive. Memphis has struck in the first round of these last 2 drafts with Edey/Coward. Edey/Coward. I highlighted those 2 dudes for a reason. This wasn't some type of accident. I highlighted those 2 dudes because I do believe when you talk about a championship window, you talk about who can you win a championship with. I think you can win a championship with Zach Edey as your starting center. I think you can win a championship with Cedric Coward as one of your starting wings. There's a conversation to be had, Joe. I mean, look, we're talking. We might as well have it right now. There's a conversation.
I stumbled into something here.
You stumbled into something. We're here now. There is a conversation to be had about the fact, can you win with a point guard who is a below average 3-point shooter at the end of the day? I love a lot that Ja brings to the table, but can you win a championship? Can he, at the end of the day, he can make your team better. Yeah, we've seen Ja elevate teams, but can you go against Oklahoma City and go into a game with Josh point guard and say we can beat them? Can you do that? I just don't think so. Now, what about Jaren Jackson Jr.? Yeah, he brings all these, the isolation scoring, the potential defensively, but at the end of the day, I mean, we see what we see. And I think the 2 stars in the Grizzlies have flaws, have notable flaws, so to speak. And so I'm at the point now where, yes, they're very important. I'm not going to discredit that. Jaren Jackson Jr., the longest tenured player with the Grizzlies, Ja Morant, I say it all the time. I cannot tell you, Joe, enough how many times people call me and say, hey, is Ja Morant playing today? Is Ja Morant playing today, Damichael? And I say, hey, he's playing today. They say, okay, I'm coming. And I say, no, he's not playing today. I say, all right, well, I won't be at the game. Ja Morant is the ticket seller. He is the best ticket seller that the Grizzlies have ever had. And he is a floor raiser, so to speak. But does he get you to the ceiling of a championship ceiling? I don't know, Joe. I don't know. And I'm leaning more towards no than yes. But I think, not saying that Zach Edey is the ultimate piece that gets you to a championship. I'm not saying that, but he is someone I can see as your starting center. And I say, okay, you can potentially win a championship with him. Cedric Howard, we know that's the case. There are a lot of wings like Cedric Howard in the NBA that have been on championship teams. Now he can elevate himself to a whole nother level, but there's proof in the pudding with a wing with the 3-and-D archetype. So look, Joe, you put me, I got in the hot seat today, but it's all good, man. This is how we feel. We're talking about how we feel.
This is something that is rare for me to say. I'm speechless. I'm going to have to gather myself. Damichael's going to have the next couple of shows solo. We'll be back together on Tuesday. I'm stammering. I'm stuttering. It is very rare for Damichael to have the hotter take than me. I got to absorb this information. How do you feel? Hit me up on X at Joe Mullianx at Damichael C to hit up the hot take artist that is Damichael Cole. Let us know in the comments. Do you agree that not only is Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. not number one in terms of most significant Grizzlies right now, they're not even in the top two per Damichael Cole. And again, I think he makes a sound argument. Like, that's the hardest part. It's bad when I agree with the hot take. Maybe he's gone too far, Damichael, this time. But let us know in the comments. Hit us up on social media. Let us know how you're feeling when we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies. Speaking of going too far, there's some national talking heads that I think have gone a little too far when it comes to the Ja Morant discourse. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. We'll talk about that next. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by GameTime. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games, but let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before you check out. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's when GameTime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I'd love that you see what you are going to be paying up front. There are no hidden fees at checkout. Plus, you can see exactly what your view is going to look like before you buy your tickets with the in-app seat view feature. They also have zone deals that are a game changer where you pick a section and GameTime picks your seats and you can save big. You can even find NBA games for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. That is the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. So it's hard to bounce back from that hot take fest that Damichael Cole took us on earlier in the program.
We switched bodies, didn't we?
I felt it was an out-of-body experience. It really was, but we try not to aggregate talking head conversations on here too often. Kendrick Perkins sometimes pisses me off, but this time it's not just one voice. I'm going to use one voice as the example here, partner, but it's been a cavalcade, right? It's been a choir of different national pundits. I don't think I've seen one national pundit on the side of Ja Morant in this whole Ja Clay saga that isn't really a saga. We talked about trash talk before. I agree this wasn't really a big thing. It's still a thing, believe it or not. And Nick Wright over on First Things First on FS1, you have to watch the whole segment at FTF on FS1. They shared it. But this is a quote from Nick Wright, Damichael. I think Ja's a clown. That's my reaction. It's hard to find a player of that caliber that squanders it all, just rank immaturity. And if you watch the entire segment, he discusses what he means by that. Stephon Marbury gets brought up, Steve Francis gets brought up, and guys, like Steve Francis just got bad at basketball, right? His skills diminished. Stephon Marbury rubbed some people the wrong way, that sort of thing. There are injury concerns. They even bring up Penny Hardaway on this episode of the show and compare him to Penny's fall from grace. But of course, Penny, his issues were injury related, right? So they're saying this is going to be the first of its kind where it's somebody, and I'm paraphrasing Nick right here, where they lose everything essentially because they're a jerk to everybody. And that took me aback. And I want to stress, and you'll have a chance to respond here in a second, the fact that
just drives me crazy, Joe.
I know it does, this is not connected to what you were talking about before. The stuff you were talking about before is basketball specific, like you talked about with the shooting and that sort of thing. That's different from this stuff. The fact that, again, you mentioned just trash talk, right? That it has accelerated this much, that it's become ammunition to add to multiple other claims against John Morant. This happens almost on a nightly basis in the NBA, trash talk among other players. And there are no think pieces 2 days later talking about how it's going to end somebody's career. I understand that Ja has baggage, but the two things don't have to be connected. The seeking and searching for connections, it's exhausting at this point, isn't it? Ja has things that he needs to get better at. I said at the time, I wish he hadn't done what he did to Clay or said what he said to Clay. But I'm acknowledging that it's not that big of a deal. This is getting out of hand, is it not?
It's been out of hand. This is ridiculous. Like, we shouldn't even be still talking about this stuff. But I mean, I guess that's what it is when you're John Morant, right? Things get magnified when you're John Morant because of his past coincidence, because of the situations that he's been in. Anytime he becomes someone who's in the headlines or or anything like that, it's magnified. So I think it just comes with the territory or whatever, but that doesn't mean I have to be okay with it or just say, oh, cool. All right. Like, I don't think that anything Ja has done recently, should lead us to having these type of talks. Like, he's talking trash to Klay Thompson. Who doesn't talk? It's funny, Joe, because you go look at the next game that Klay Thompson played. Guess what? The bench, whoever the Mavs were playing against in that game,
I believe they also called him a bum.
They were talking trash to Klay in that game. Like, this is NBA. This is basketball. This is competitive sports. And I already said, look, with me, when it comes to competitive sports, I'm going to talk trash. It's just part of it. I feel like I got to get the mental edge on you, and I'm going to do what I can to kind of try to weaken you or damage you from a mental standpoint while keeping it respectful. I'm not going to go outside of the lines, but I'm going to toe it. I'm going to toe those lines a little bit to try to get you.
Didn't you say a couple episodes ago you were going to talk about people's girlfriends?
No, Joe. I didn't talk about their girlfriends. I just said the girlfriend's name. They were getting the batter box. I would just say, Alexis.
Major difference there.
I would just say, yeah. Come on, man. Give me some. I'm not that type of guy, Joe. You know me. Come on. Like, I would just say Alexis, or I would just say whatever the girl's name is. But I wouldn't go any further than that, because in their minds, they're like, how does he know my girlfriend's name? And they're already, I win at that point. But
you were journalistic power even back then.
Even back in 2014, 2015, Joe. But this whole thing with John Morant is just exhausting. Like, I think, again, this all goes back to 2022, 2023. He's been put on this pedestal that he's going to be judged differently, right? A lot of things I think I saw Gilbert Arenas kind of touch on this, but like a lot of things that John Morant kind of ends up doing, other players will be able to do, and it won't lead to this. It's the situation that Ja's in, and quite frankly, it's not fair, but it is what it is, as people like to say. So, the discourse is gone. It's definitely gone too far, because at the end of the day, we just got to look at it for what it is, and we're not doing that. We're looking at it for the mistakes that he made when in 2023 and whatnot. So, I think that's just kind of the hand he's been dealt at this point.
All the credit that has been given to the Amazon broadcast and the NBC broadcast, the moving away from talking heads and these kinds of hot takes, that they aren't exempt from this in this particular instance. John Morant has plenty of things you could talk about in terms of a potential falling off of his basketball skill. The fact that he's not finishing at the rim the way that he used to. He's not attacking the way that he used to. They briefly, in the Nick Wright clip, they passed right over the fact that you could make I don't know that I would agree with it, because he's entering his prime in theory, but you can make an argument statistically and just by watching the games that maybe John Morant has lost a step athletically. Like, you can say these things that at least have some semblance of film and data that could back up the take. You can disagree with that feeling, but you could disagree with that opinion, but at least it will be backed up by actual basketball conversation. This is something that is strictly just, he's a jerk. Well, that's kind of subjective. You know what I mean? Like what does it mean to be a jerk in the year 2025? There's all sorts of things that happen around the globe that, we're not going to get onto on a Locked On Grizzlies podcast. What makes somebody a jerk this time of day? The fact that he called him a bum and talked trash to him, and you didn't know that Cam Spencer's brother played for the Golden State Warriors? How is that Ja Morant's fault? Like, I don't see how there's a difference between correlation and causation. And I'm not sure that we are consistently focused on why you said, and I didn't disagree with, if you picked up on that, what you said earlier in the show, that Ja Morant is not the most significant Memphis Grizzly at this moment, and neither is Jaren Jackson Jr. That should be the headline. That should be the focal point. And yet we're talking about a guy that wasn't active in a game, calling a guy that is past his prime a bum in a game between two losing basketball teams. I think that we're killing the lead a little bit here. We're not really following what the real story is. And that's what annoys me the most when it comes to this situation at this point. It's not fair to Ja, right? Like, as a professional basketball player, if you're not performing the way you're supposed to, you're paid a ton of money. That's different. I think that that's fair game to talk about. But to say somebody's a jerk and that's the reason that his career is going to end, that's one of the worst takes I think I've ever heard on a Talking Head program. But let Damichael and I know in the comments. Hit us up on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinex. Are you tired of this Ja Morant discourse? I have noticed that things are starting to turn a little bit on Ja on social media. You've probably seen it as well, Damichael. And again, I don't know that that's entirely fair either, but I do believe that, even in Memphis, there is some kind of starting of having things kind of, you're either in or you're out. And people are starting to ask that more about Ja Morant. At least that's what my timeline has looked like in my mentions. And when we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll finish up this episode of the show. Grizzlies, Pelicans. Correct me if I'm wrong, partner. This is a cup night, right? NBA Cup?
This is the NBA Cup game, Joe. You know
because it's
it.
the Cup. Of course I knew it was the Cup,
Joe. You knew it.
Of course I knew it was the Cup.
This is an important game.
Don't you dare ever disrespect the NBA Cup again, dear listener, dear viewer. I knew exactly what it is. A Cup night in America, and we are going to freaking focus in and give it the respect it deserves. Coming up next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by DripDrop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I have been using DripDrop. It is doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. DripDrop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, over 90% of top college and pro teams, hopefully the Memphis Grizzlies going into a cup night. It tastes amazing. I'm going to be honest with you. And I use DripDrop as a part of my daily routine. I'll mix it in the morning before I go on my morning walk, during a midday slump where I need a little pick-me-up. Hydration has become non-negotiable for me, and DripDrop helps me feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, better overall. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off of your first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard later on in the year. Keep your body and mind performing at their best with DripDrop. Closing out this episode of Locked On Grizzlies here. It's been a hot take-riddled episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, my co-host. I'm Joe Mullinex with you. Very excited to be a part of the #1 podcast sports network out there, Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day here at Locked On Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies have a cup night ball game tonight going against the New Orleans Pelicans. And the Pelicans, don't look now, Damichael. You look at the record and you're like, the Grizzlies got a shot in this one. The Pelicans are trending down a little bit. Nay, yet, negative, not the case. They have a young man who I don't think it's possible to make that trade look right.
Oh, I know where you're going.
But he is not.
He makes it close, doesn't it?
Basketball. He is a lot of fun to watch play. I, of course, am talking about the New Orleans Pelicans rookie, Derek Queen, doing some really impressive things as a big man. It's almost like Marc Gasol and Boogie Cousins had a baby. When I watch this guy play basketball, is kind of the vibe I get, and
it's
maybe
like a teenage Nikola Jokic. There you go.
I like that too. I think that he's unique. I like watching him play. Yeah. I'm excited to watch this game tonight, and I'm excited to watch how the Grizzlies defend this guy. Again, we mentioned earlier in the show, Zach Edey questionable for the game, migraine. Anybody that's ever actually had a migraine would never roll their eyes at that designation. I can't imagine trying to play basketball while having a migraine. So hopefully Zach Edey feels better soon if it's not, to play in the game tonight, just because migraines suck. But if Edey can go, again, questionable means 50-50. If Edey can go, it's going to be a fascinating matchup. If Edey can't go, how the Grizzlies handle Queen and Fears, the lead point guard there in New Orleans as well. Zero Fears, best jersey in the NBA.
Look at you,
Ironically, the Pelicans are kind of going through a similar thing to the Grizzlies, right? Zion Williamson is still on the New Orleans Pelicans. And I don't think folks in NOLA would be saying that Zion is the most significant member of that roster anymore.
No, I mean, you're missing Zion and you're missing Jordan Poole, Herb Jones. Those are some of the big injuries over there. So the Pelicans definitely aren't some team that's super healthy right now that the Grizzlies are going to go against. Like, sure, Trey Murphy is having another great year, kind of picking up where he left off last season, where he kind of had a breakout season. He's showing right now that isn't some fluke. This is some guy that you're going to have to really account for when you talk about high up on the Pelican scouting report. And that's him. So Derek Queen, it's a lot to like about his game. Of course, about the scoring, 3 levels, right? And then the rebounding, but the passing. He can really dish the ball, Joe. Like he can get busy. And he's someone, when he has the basketball, you don't get caught ball watching. A lot of these centers, they turn their head away from the basket and they dip their shoulder into the player's chest. You say, I can go help and things like that. Against this guy, you got to be careful because he sees exactly what you see. So, I do like that fact that this is a matchup where it's another team with a lot of young pieces and things like that. The one area where the Pelicans have been good because they've been bad in many of them is the fact that they can turn you over. They have the ability to force turnovers, but to that point, Herb Jones is not playing. He has the calf injury. How many times have you heard that? Stop me if you've heard someone has a calf injury in the NBA before. But so he has
all this medical science and all this money invested and just can't get past the calf strain.
You can't get past the calf strains, man. All pace, Joe. Everyone wants to play with pace. Look, you play with pace, there's a risk to it. But no Herb Jones for the Pelicans in this game. This is a very winnable game, Joe. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a game the Grizzlies should win. Yes, Derek Queen is a tough draw. Jeremiah Fears, but those are rookies. Like, we're talking about rookies at the end of the day. Troy Murphy. Like, we know, what Troy Murphy brings to the table. Really talented scorer, but why can't the Grizzlies match that? At the end of the day, no matter what the Grizzlies are on the offensive end, we know with the players that they have that should be available against the Pelicans, they can be a good defense. We know that much. With the Pelicans, we don't know if they're going to be good offensively. We don't know if they're going to be good defensively. So the Grizzlies do have that advantage from the standpoint of we can make this game muddy. We can get to the fourth quarter and see if we could win this thing. We'll see what happens with Zach Edey. I wrote a story kind of just updating on where he is, at this point. And look, he was at practice. He was doing his typical shooter, free throws, hook shots, all the stuff that media we typically see him doing at practice. He was doing. Now, I know, Thomas Isolo said that he wasn't doing much, running around and things like that at practice. But the Grizzlies, again, as Joe kind of alluded to earlier, they didn't have a high intensity practice. So just because Zach Edey wasn't doing that, and it's not like the rest of the team, was just getting up and down and he was just off to the side or something. So I want to point out the fact that, look, he was at practice. He was available. Me thinks he has a good chance at playing, Joe. That's the situation. That's the direction that I'm leaning in. And if you get Zach Edey for this game, given the matchup, I think the Grizzlies will be in good shape.
But again, I want to stress, because people that don't understand, and me personally, I've never had a migraine, but I've been around people that have had them. It can make you physically ill, all sorts of different things. That's not something that you mess with or even try to play professional basketball with, in my opinion. I'm okay if he doesn't play, but I do think that if they were really worried about it, it would have had a different distinction. You wouldn't have messed with a questionable diagnosis there. It just allows for them within league rules, if they need to sit him, they can. I'm with you. I think Zach Edey will play, and I think that it's going to be fascinating. Somebody that we talked about not being that significant in Memphis right now, or at least not as significant as Zach Edey and Cedric Howard. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not on the injury report. That means Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to play, and this would be a great opportunity for Jaren to come out and show exactly how he is significant, the second highest paid player on the roster, somebody who, again, 8 months ago, we were having a conversation about this dude being one of the top 15 or 20 players in the National Basketball Association. And now a rookie and a second.
You were going to bat for him, Joe. You were going in hard on here.
Hard for these dudes, man. Like, that's what, it's just so hard for me. Thank you, Damichael, for acknowledging my plight in all of this. How much I have fought for Jaren Jackson Jr. and John Morant.
You have.
And it just makes me look like a big dumb dummy. So I'm going back in. I'm ready to get hurt again. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have a great performance against the Pelicans, reminding everybody exactly who he is. It's going to be a great night for the Grizzlies because of Triple J, not because of some young guy that two podcasters think is more significant at this stage of the game than he is. So it'll be an interesting game. And Damichael, I know you're going to have us covered very well on our Thanksgiving-ish edition of the show. Again, Damichael might push it live Wednesday night, might be Thursday morning. We promise you there will be an episode to close out the week. But then for us here at Locked On Grizzlies, we're putting the Gone Fishing sign up for the holiday. We'll be back on Monday to break down Grizzlies Kings. But you obviously will be taking us into the holiday, Damichael. What will you be looking for talking about coming out of Grizzlies Pelicans?
Yeah, one of those things that I'm going to be looking for is something you alluded to, and that's Jaren Jackson Jr. and how he kind of continues to, I think there's two different conversations going on right now when it comes to Jaren Jackson Jr. One of those conversations is, some people feel like, when he came back, he kind of messed things up or, whatever the case may be on that end. But the other part is, to me, what the real issue is. The real issue is what we've talked about since the beginning. How does Jaren Jackson Jr. fit into Tuomas Isolo's offensive system? I don't think it's a matter of, he messed up the vibes or anything like that. This is just what we've been seeing. We have not seen Jaren string together a bunch of dominant games like he continuously did last season. So I want to see, okay, look, there's still no job. So Jaren's going to be aggressive, but can he get put into those optimal spots where we see the efficiency that he's had most of this season and then the volume at the same time? Those are two things that I want to see meshed together. Jaren's something I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to. But, yeah, you want to see the Grizzlies kind of show progression on offense as well.
I think we talked about it with Derek Queen a little bit, and you'll probably talk a little bit more about this on our next episode, so I don't want to take too much of your thunder here. It's something that I talk about with Jaren all the time. Derek Queen as a rookie is better at it than Jaren Jackson Jr. is as a 7-year vet. And that is having that head up and making those
passing out of those doubles. You talk about it all the time, Joe. Yep.
Derek Queen's better at it right now than Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't think that's debatable. And that's something that Jaren is if he's going to fit in this system, he has to improve upon. But again, I'm sure you'll talk about that and more on our next edition of the show. Make sure you're hanging out with Damichael for our holiday edition of the podcast. And then again, after Damichael's solo show, we will be off until the Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies for the Thanksgiving holiday. We wish you and yours, if you're here in the States celebrating, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy family and football and food and friends and all the things that make Thanksgiving great. We hope that you guys are safely traveling and all those sorts of things. We wish you all the very best. Happy Thanksgiving, one and all. Thanks for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd. He hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, Damichael. I am thankful for you, my wonderful co-host. Again, it's been another great banner year for Locked On Grizzlies. That's only going to keep going as the dynamic duo continues to grind forth and build our wonderful little corner of the internet we like to call Locked On Grizzlies. But none of that is possible without our tremendous everydayers, the folks that have helped make not just the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, but the folks that have helped Locked On Grizzlies grow these last few years. So thank you guys so much for that. We're thankful for you. I'm thankful for Damichael. I'm thankful for all sorts of wonderful things. And I am thankful that it is time for me to say goodbye. So for Damichael, I am Joe. Make sure you are staying locked in, Grizzlies fans. Enjoy Grizzlies Pelicans. Enjoy a piece of pie for me. And we will catch you next time here on Locked On Grizzlies. See ya.